You know, when we think about the colonization of America, England is usually front and center. But back in the 16th century, oh, they were seriously late to the party. The New World was this mad dash dominated by the huge empires of Spain and France. England was the underdog, just trying to get a foot in the door.
So how in the world did that happen? How did a small island nation manage to outplay its giant rivals and eventually lay the groundwork for what would become the United States? It's this incredible story of ambition, sure luck, and yeah, a whole lot of brutality. And as we're about to see, it was anything but a sure thing.
All right, so what was it that pushed England to take such a massive risk? Well, in the late 1500s, the country was just buzzing with this potent mix of religious fervor, a deep jealousy of Spain's wealth, and some pretty serious problems back home.
And what's so wild is how they spelled this all out. This wasn't some vague hope. It was basically a business plan. In 1584, a writer named Richard Hakluyt laid it all out for the Queen. He argued that England had, 1, a religious duty to save the New World from Catholic Spain, 2, a social duty to give its own poor a fresh start, and 3, of course, a massive opportunity to get incredibly rich. This document? It became their official playbook.
But this wasn't just about writing proposals. It was about taking action. Queen Elizabeth knew she couldn't afford a direct war with a superpower like Spain, so she got creative. She sponsored state-sanctioned pirates, these guys called sea dogs. Men like the famous Francis Drake were basically given a license to steal, raiding Spanish ships and settlements all along the American coast. And as you can imagine, Spain was absolutely furious.
All of that tension was about to explode into one of the most legendary naval battles in history. And this wasn't just any battle. This was for control of the Atlantic. Whoever won would hold the keys to the New World. The final straw came in 1587, when England executed the Catholic Mary, Queen of Scots. That was it for Spain. King Philip II launched his, quote, invincible armada. On paper, England didn't stand a chance, but their smaller, quicker ships and, get this, a massive freak storm, which the English called the Protestant wind, completely shattered the Spanish fleet. Just like that, the biggest obstacle between England and America was gone, but clearing the seas was only the first step.
Winning a sea battle's one thing, but actually building a colony from scratch across an ocean, that's a whole different ballgame. With the Spanish threat out of the way, England could finally try to plant its flag in America. They learned pretty quickly that it was a brutal, deadly business. Their first attempts were, to put it mildly, complete disasters. The most famous of these failures is the chilling mystery of Roanoke. In 1587, a man named John White set up a colony with about 115 men, women, and children. He had to sail back to England for supplies, but the war with the Armada trapped him there for 3 long years. When he finally made it back, the settlement was deserted. Everyone was gone. The only clue they left behind was a single word carved into a post: Croatoan.
Okay, so fast forward 20 years to 1607. After the Roanoke disaster, the English are pretty demoralized. The Virginia Company decides to fund one more expedition to a place they'll name Jamestown. This was it, a high-stakes, last-ditch effort. If this failed, the English dream of America might have been over for good.
To really get a sense of how desperate things got, just look at this number: 351. By 1617, 10 years after Jamestown was founded, thousands of settlers had been sent over. Only 351 of them were still alive. I mean, the death rate was just catastrophic.
Why was it so bad? Well, the colonists were totally unprepared. These weren't rugged farmers, they were gentlemen and adventurers who thought they were going to find gold lying on the ground. Instead, they found backbreaking labor, disease, and starvation. In fact, the only reason the colonies survived that first brutal winter at all was because the local Powhatan people gave them food.
So the colony was on life support. Their relationship with the Powhatan was falling apart. England's grand experiment was just moments from becoming another failure. And then something totally unexpected happened that changed the course of history.
I mean, really think about it. They have no gold, they can't seem to grow enough food to survive, and they're dying in droves. What on earth could turn this disaster around? The answer wasn't a new weapon or a brilliant general. It was a plant.
That's right, tobacco. A colonist named John Rolfe figured out how to cultivate a new, sweeter strain of tobacco that Europeans just couldn't get enough of, and they went absolutely crazy for it.
This chart says it all, really. The demand just exploded. Within a couple of decades, Jamestown went from shipping basically nothing to exporting 15 million pounds of tobacco every single year. This one cash crop transformed a dying outpost into a boomtown. And a boomtown needs two things: more land and more labor.
But this sudden success came with a really dark side. That insatiable hunger for land to grow tobacco put the English on a direct collision course with the native peoples who had been there for centuries. The fragile peace they had was about to shatter. In 1622, Powhatan's brother led a surprise attack that killed nearly 350 colonists, a huge portion of their population. And while this was devastating, for the leaders back in England, it was more than a tragedy. It was an opportunity. It gave them the excuse they needed to change their entire strategy in America. And this was the new plan. No more attempts at coexistence or conversion. The strategy now was simple. 1. Use overwhelming violence. 2. Aggressively seize native land for tobacco. And 3. Establish total English dominance. This wasn't some new idea they came up with on the spot. It was a brutal, calculated playbook they had already used to colonize Ireland.
It's honestly hard to overstate how critical tobacco was to all of this. Without it, none of this likely would have happened. The constant failure, the disease, and as one source puts it, the sheer demoralization of those early years probably would have been enough to make England give up for good. Tobacco wasn't just a crop, it was the engine that powered an empire.
And that leaves us with a pretty wild thought, doesn't it? The English foothold in America was hanging by a thread. It wasn't saved by military genius or some grand strategy. It was saved by a highly addictive plant. So you have to wonder, if that one crop had failed, what would the map of North America even look like today? Would it be Spanish, French, or something else entirely?